Well, greetings. Michael Didier here. You know, oftentimes when we read Torah, I think we forget that it's not sequential. When you read a book, for the most part, it's sequential. There's some flashbacks now and then, but it's sequential. Not so with Torah. Oftentimes, Yehovah has, and I don't know, maybe it's part of him wanting us to learn his ways line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. Genesis 1 is a great example. You know, we look at it and it says that Yehovah created the man and his woman on that first chapter, in that first chapter. But then in chapter 2, he creates the man in his own image and in his, his own image and his own likeness, image and likeness. And then he creates the woman, the man's woman from the man. Yes, he created them both, but he created them both differently. And if we look at one verse and try and build our theology based on the overview, we have problems. Today, we're going to see that that the chapters in Numbers are not sequential. They jump around a bit. And these are things that we have to take into consideration, I guess is a good way to say it, so that we get deeper understandings. Remember, it's always about getting deeper understandings. Well, let's do a quick review of what we covered last week. I especially liked the law of jealousy. It demonstrated some things that I've found in the past that will help us develop deeper understandings. He begins not with the law of jealousy, but talking about getting the unclean, both the male and the female, out of the camp. You know, it's interesting. Usually he's talking about the males, but when he wants to talk about the females, he includes the females. He says it. He says, you shall put both male and female. Put out both female and male. Talking about people who have discharges, people who have leprosy, people who are contaminated by a corpse, by the dead. Come back from war. You don't just go into the camp. You stay outside the camp. When we went to war with Midian at the end of this chapter, we're going to see that we didn't come back into the camp. We were outside the camp for 7 days. The men, the ones who went to war. No ladies went to war. We brought back some ladies with us. Well, then he starts talking about a man and a woman. Let me just read this. I think this is really pertinent that we understand this. Speak to Israel's seed when a man, an ish, or a woman commits any sin. He says, the man, Adam, is slyly treacherous. Remember we were talking about malal? Ooh, so interesting. But then he begins to talk to us, Israel's seed, about the malal woman who goes to another man. This is the law of jealousy, and it begins here in 12. Listen to what he says. Speak to Israel's seed and say to them, if any man, look what it says, ish, if any man's woman deviates, and look what it says, and is slyly treacherous. You know, I think it's so interesting that when he was talking about if a man and a woman commit any sin, Adam is malal, treacherous to Yehovah. Why not the woman? Because she's bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. She's his woman. She could be his woman and be his servant. She's still his woman. That's why you got to keep your servants in line. But here is the woman who deviates and is malal towards her man. It says towards him. Ooh, so this whole chapter then, whether or not she has gone and been taken by another man. Remember, that's what we were talking about, being taken by another man. It says, and a man lies with her. Not talking about her lying with a man. And a man lies with her. And it's hidden from the eyes of her man. And it is concealed that she has defiled herself. He doesn't know it. Well, maybe she has, maybe she hasn't. You know, this is part of the reason why we keep our women closer to us. We don't send our women out unsupervised without knowing where they're going. I was thinking this morning it would be good to have some kind of a tracker on our phones so that I can keep track of Carissa when she's not around. I want to know that she's safe. I want to know that she's going where she says she's going to go. She just laughed. Isn't that funny? But I want her to be able to see that I'm safe. We lose our phones. You know, that's what it's mainly for. We lose our phones. We can find out where our phone went. I lost one recently. But here's a situation where the man doesn't know if his woman is malal to him, deviating, and is treacherously deceitful to him by letting another man come to her. Well, maybe she is, maybe she isn't. But there's a doubt in his mind. Remember, when Yehovah, he knows the heart of a man. He says the heart of a man is deceitful, above all things, desperately wicked. Who can know it? But he says, I, Yehovah, know the heart. I test the mind. But the man doesn't know the heart of his woman. This is the way that we get to the truth. And it appears that if we don't take our woman to the priest and go through this process, that there's going to be some kind of sin that's going to come on us. Remember how this ended? So interesting. It says, then the man shall be free from iniquity. The man shall be free from iniquity? Why? Because he took his woman to get her checked out. If there's doubt in his mind, he's got to get it checked out. Can't have that doubt stay in your mind. Well, two things. Either for the woman, if she's innocent, she got to come into the tabernacle. No women get to see the inside of the tabernacle. They don't know what the bronze altar looks like. When it's traveling, it's covered. They don't ever see the bronze altar. They don't see the bronze laver. They don't know what's going on inside the court of the tabernacle, which is where they're being brought to. Remember, the priest is going to bring her in, cover her head, bring her in, and then uncover her head. Give her the water that he's mixed. He got water from the laver, it appears. He's going to take some dirt from the tabernacle floor inside the tabernacle, mix it in. He's going to write a curse on a piece of paper, tear it up, burn it, whatever he does, and put it into the water. And then he's going to make her drink it. One of two things are going to happen. Either she's going to be innocent and nothing's going to happen to her. She got the bonus of being able to see the inside. And, now her man is going to have a peace of mind. She should be happy for that. People were saying, well, that's going to wreck a marriage. No, I think that's the problem that we have today. We don't understand what marriage is. We don't understand who is the head of whom. And because of that, we have problems. If she's guilty, it says her belly's going to swell and her thigh's going to rot. Another benefit, if she is not guilty, is it says that he's going to see that she gets sons. Conceive sons, seed, it said. But if she is guilty, How fast is this thigh going to rot and this belly swell? Immediately? Is it possible she's not going to go home that night? She's going to start wandering the streets that very day? Who's going to take her in? The man who came to her? Maybe. If he doesn't mind a swelling belly and a rotting thigh. I'm guessing he probably is going to, even though he was more than willing to take her. But no, I don't think she's going to find a place to go anymore. Sounds like a pretty miserable death, doesn't it? But you can't be malal to your man. Don't deviate and be malal to your man. Men, don't deviate and be malal to Yehovah. Of course, most of us have never taken Yehovah. We're still serving the other Elohim of the land, aren't we? We're still living according to the doctrines and traditions, the statutes and judgments and ordinances of the world. Never left. Got to leave first to become Israel, remember? All right. Well, the next chapter we went to was the Nazirite vow. I had some challenges with this. It says when either a man or a woman consecrates an offering to let's see what it says. When either a man or a woman shall be set apart to vow a vow of Nazir to separate unto Yehovah. Does a woman separate unto Yehovah, or does she separate unto her man? We found that there was not a single example of a female Nazir, which is short for, or which is where Nazirite comes from, in Torah. Doesn't exist. There were only 3 men who took a Nazirite vow for life. Well, we talked about this at length last week. I don't want to go into it again. Talked about what happens if we accidentally touch somebody, they die in front of us. We got to start our vow all over again. If we made a 100-day vow, we're 90th day, and our mother dies, or our sister dies, our wife dies, somebody close to us dies, or somebody just keels over next to us, contaminates us. We got to start again because we got to fulfill that vow. All right, and then what we're going to bring when it's all done are things that we talked about today. We're going to talk about, first, the dedication of the bronze altar. When was the bronze altar dedicated? Remember I was talking about sequential chapters in Torah? They jump around. In chapter 1, let's go to chapter 1 briefly. I want you to see this. Numbers 1. Here. Now, Yehovah spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting, on the first day of the 2nd month, in the 2nd year after they came out of the land of Egypt. First day, 2nd month, after we came out of the land of Egypt. First day, 2nd month. This is where this chapter starts. This is the chapter that we're going to number all of Israel's seed. Let's take a look at it just briefly. Yehovah says, these are the names. Actually, how does he say it? These are the names of the men who shall stand with you. He says, Aaron and Moses and Aaron, you and Aaron are to number Israel's seed with these men. These are the men he chose. This is the 2nd month. Where's Judah? Here it is. From Judah, Nahshon, son of Amminadab. Okay, 2nd month. Let's remember this, 2nd month. This is Yehovah choosing these men. Okay, but watch what happens now. Because we're going into chapter 7, chapter 7, it says, and it came to pass when Moses had finished setting up the tabernacle. When did Moses finish setting up the tabernacle? It was the first month of the second year after we came out of Egypt. We saw that in chapter 40 of Exodus. Here it is. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, on the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. This is the first month after we came out of Egypt, in the second year after we came out of Egypt. That whole first year, there was no tabernacle. Talks about the tabernacle of meetings for a whole chapter. Well, half the chapter anyway, in Exodus. But it actually was not even put up. The tabernacle that we're talking about, the Mishkan, there was a tent of meeting that was put up, but it wasn't the tabernacle. It was a tent of meeting. Well, now it's up. It was consecrated. Here, let me go back to Numbers 7, the one we're doing today. Here is Yasher. Yasher, Yasher is more sequential in its writing than Torah is. Because we're going to see in Yasher, well, let's just take a look at it. Here they had, and on the 8th day, being the first day of the first month in the second year from the Israelites' departure from Egypt. First month, first year, they're talking about the 8th day. We're talking about the days that the priests were consecrated. They were consecrated from the 23rd day of the 12th month for 7 days. After 7 days, we had a new year. The new year, the first day of the second month, is the 8th day that we're talking about. These are the priests that are going to be sanctified. Today, we're going to sanctify the the Levites. The priests have been sanctified. It took them 7 days to do it. Today, we're going to raise the tabernacle. It says Moses erected the sanctuary. And Moses put up all the furniture of the tabernacle and the furniture of the sanctuary, and he did all that Yehovah had commanded him. This is what happened in Exodus. We're going back in time. This is the same day, the first day of the first month of the second year, that Nadab and Abihu died. Well, let's look at number 2. Then the princes, then Israel's princes. Oh, this construction is so interesting. This is what we see all the time. See this yod? The word that we're talking about here is nasi. This is talking about Israel's nasi, Israel's princes, the same way it talks about Israel's seed. Very interesting construction. You got to watch for this. They always translate it with the definite article, the leaders of Israel, the princes of Israel. The heads of their fathers' houses, who were the leaders of the tribes, and over those who were numbered, made an offering. Hear what's happening? These princes of Israel are bringing an offering to Yehovah on the first day of the first month of the second year. The same day that the tabernacle was raised, the same day that Nadab and Abihu died. Watch what happens on this day. Verse 3. And they brought their offerings. This is used correctly. We see offerings all the time. This is about the only time that it should be used. Korban. Their korban is what it says. Their korban. There's korban. And the there is the nun and the mem that says their korban. It's a conjugation of this particular word. And they brought their korban. Who brought them? The princes of Israel before Yehovah, before Yehovah's face. What did they bring? 6 covered carts. Remember I said the priests who are doing the heavy work are going to get carts. Remember, the priests of Gershom were going to do all of the tent coverings, the hanging veils, both the one between, nope, I take it back, not the one between the holy and the holy, because that one went on top of the Ark of the Covenant, and then a leather veil, a leather covering, and then a blue covering. But they did take the veil that is the door of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, we call it the tent of meetings, same thing. And they took the coverings that were on top of the Mishkan. There was 4 coverings on top of that. And they took all the coverings, what we call it, the cloth goods that were encircling the court of the tabernacle. Not the pillars, just the cloth goods. And the door. It was a cloth door, an embroidered door. That's what they carried. Significant in weight, certainly. And that's why they're going to see that they're going to get some of these wagons. The sons of Merari, they had in charge of all the pillars, all of the sockets. They had charge of all the sockets. Remember, every board on the tabernacle of meeting, the Mishkan, had 2 sockets. And there was lots and lots of boards on that. Then all the pillars had sockets. Then outside the court, there was many, many, many pillars that held up the court surrounding the tabernacle. They took all those. They took care of all the ropes. They took care of all the tent pegs. They had a lot to carry. And these wagons are what's going to be used for it. But look what it says. And they brought their offerings. This is the 12 princes of Israel who brought these coverings. Look what it says before Yehovah. 6 covered carts and 12 oxen. A cart for every 2 of the princes. So for every 2 princes, we brought 1 cart. And for each one, an ox. Each prince is going to bring an ox. Every 2 princes is going to bring a cart, a wagon, if you will. And it's going to be used, watch what happens. And they presented them before the tabernacle. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, accept these from them, the princes, that they may be used in doing the work of the tent of meeting. And you shall give them to the Levites, to every man according to his service. So Moses took the carts and the oxen and gave them to the Levites. He says, 2 carts and 4 oxen he gave to Gershon's seed. Gershon's seed. B'nai Gershon. And 4 carts and 8 oxen he gave to the sons of Merari according to their service, under the authority of Ithamar, the son of Aaron the priest. Both the sons of Gershon and the sons of Merari are under Ithamar's, what did they say, authority. They are responsible to Ithamar. Ithamar is responsible to his brother, and he supervises not only the taking down, but the putting up of the tabernacle. So he's in charge of not only Kohath, but also Ithamar to make sure everything's done well. He's overseeing the whole project. But it says, but to the sons of Kohath, he gave none, because theirs was the service of the Kodesh things. which they carried on their shoulders. They carried the Ark of the Covenant. They carried the lampstand. Remember, that was between a pole. They carried the table and the altar of incense on poles. And they said they had some other accoutrements that they carried also. I wonder if they carried the brass altar also, and probably the laver. So interesting to see how this all fits together. I read a book again this week about Rechab, the prostitute that helped two spies at Jericho. And she, when they were crossing the river, she was on her wall and she could see the lights shining off the Ark of the Covenant. Well, we know the Ark of the Covenant had a blue covering on it. You don't see it, but everybody thinks you see it. Well, this is what it had in the book. And this is so common. We see this all the time because people don't understand what's going on. There's people who say, oh, well, we found the Ark of the Covenant. Somebody found the Ark of the Covenant. Well, if he found the Ark of the Covenant, he would have seen something with the blue covering on it. If you looked at it, he died. I think Yehovah is going to keep us from seeing the Ark of the Covenant right now until he raises up priests. If we're ever going to see it again, we may never see it again. But only the priests got to look at it. We saw that last week also, or maybe the week before. Which they carry on their shoulders, the separate things, the Kodesh things. Verse 10. Now the princes offered the dedication for the altar when it was anointed. Remember, he anointed it that day. He anointed all the holy things. This is Moses. Put them to God, moved them in, got everything in its place, and then anointed everything. Pretty much that's where he left it. But now, 7 chapters later, we're seeing how this altar, this is the Olah altar, is going to be dedicated. This is an important altar. This is where all of Israel's seed is going to bring their kata'ah, their sin offerings, their olah, their burnt offerings, their mincha, and their Hashem, and their shalamim, slaughters, voluntary offerings to Yehovah. For Yehovah said to Moses, they shall bring their korban, 1 liter each day for the dedication of the altar. So we have 12 leaders, 12 princes, 12 princes, 1 prince each day for the dedication of the altar. It's going to take us 12 days to do all these princes. The Levites won't be doing this. This is the rest of the tribe. It says, and the one who brought his korban on the first day was Nahshon, son of Amminadab, from the tribe of Judah. This is what we were just reading. Remember when we counted it? It sounded like Yehovah picked these men in the 2nd month. But here we are in the 1st month. Same men. Go figure. Apparently they already were chosen in the 1st month. But Torah doesn't mention it until the 2nd month. You see how things jump around? It's about learning Torah line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. We got to see how they fit together. All the names, Nahshon, son of Amminadab, from the tribe of Judah, and all the other men who are going to bring exactly the same things that we're going to read right now, are the same men whom Yehovah supposedly chose in the second month to number Israel. I think, if anything, he chose them in the first month. Or maybe these were already the men who were the heads of the tribes of Israel. Is that possible? It may be. It says, this is Aminadab's, the tribe of Judah's offerings. His offering was 1 silver platter, the weight of which was 130 shekels, and 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels. Silver platter, silver bowl, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, both of them full of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain, as a minka. Offering is added. Whenever you see offering, no, it's added. It's a minka. They don't say minka offering, as a minka. They brought their offerings. This is the offering that they're bringing. It's a minka. 1 gold pan of 10 shekels full of incense. 1 young bull, 1 ram and 1 male lamb of the first year. Okay, ram is a sheep. A male lamb also, if the first year, is a sheep. It's just a young sheep, so they call it a lamb. But the ram and the lamb are both the same thing. If they're going to talk about goats, they're going to talk about goats. It says 1 kid of the goats as a sin, as a kata'ah. Again, no offering there, as a kata'ah. And for a slaughter of shalamim, it's the thing we're going to eat. 2 oxen, 5 ram, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs in their first year. This was the offering of Nahshon, the son of Aminadab. Who ate this meat? I would think it probably was the sons of Judah. Is Judah's seed that were coming and eating these shalamim, slaughtered shalamim, 2 ox, 5 rams. This is a lot of meat. 5 male goats, 5 male lambs of the first year with the priests. This was the offering, the korban. This was the offerings of Nahshon, the son of Aminadab. And then it says, on the second day. So we're going to see that we're going to have exactly the same thing happen every day. This is going to be very redundant. So we had Zuar, the son of Issachar. Let me just show you. If I go back to Leviticus 1, Zoar, son of Issachar. From Issachar, Nathaniel, the son of Zoar. Let's go back. I just want you to see these are the same men. Here we are. Nathaniel, son of Zoar, from Issachar. He's going to bring exactly the same things, the silver platters, the bowls, the gold pan, the bull, the ram, the lamb, everything else. Everything's the same. Do the same thing each day for 12 days because we got 12 tribes. Then on the 13th day, what's going to happen on the 13th day? I want to show you something. This is what Yesher has to say about this. We read verse 4 already, on the 8th day being the first day of the first month. Then it says, and they brought up their offerings, each prince, they call them princes here, for 1 day, a prince each day for 12 days. So one had to be happening on the first day, 1st through the 12th. They gave exactly the same things that we were talking about here. Thus did the 12 princes of Israel, day by day, each man in his day. Actually, I was hoping it was going to go a little bit further. I wanted to get to 15. Maybe I've got that someplace down below here. So we got through all the tribes. They all did exactly the same thing. I'm not even going to read it. It's going to be very redundant if I do read it. Let's continue with where it stops going through all this. Asher, silver platter, 12th day was Naphtali. He was the last one. This was the dedication for the altar from the princes, from Israel's princes. When it was anointed, 12 silver platters, 12 silver bowls, 12 gold pans. Each silver platter weighed 130 shekels, each bowl 70 shekels. All the silver of the vessels' weight was 2,400 shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. The 12 gold pans full of incense weighed 10 shekels apiece. According to the shekel of the sanctuary, all the gold of the pans weighed 120 shekels. All the oxen for the burnt offerings were 12 young bulls, the rams 12, the male lambs for their first year 12 with their grain offerings, and the kids of the goats as kata'ah 12. And all the oxen for the slaughtered shalamim were 24 bulls, rams 60, male goats 60, the lambs in their first year 60. This was the dedication offering for the altar after it was anointed. This was a big deal. Now, when Moses went into the tent of meeting to speak with him, he heard a voice speaking to him from above the mercy seat. This is after all this had taken place, apparently on the 12th day. He heard the voice of one speaking to him from above the mercy seat that was on the ark of the testimony, from between the two cherubim. Thus he spoke to him. What did he say? This is Yehovah speaking. The ark of the testimony between the cherubim. This is what he said he would do. This is Numbers 7, 12th day, first month, second year. Here's what he said would happen. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim, which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you in commandment to Israel's seed. Yehovah, through Moses, commands Israel's seed, his Ezra men, not the Ger. They teach them what they're supposed to do. It says one law for the Ger and for the native born, or the native born and the Ger who dwell with you. We'll see that again today. But the laws don't apply the same for a Ger as they do for an Israelite. We'll see how far we get today. Maybe we'll see that example. What I was hoping was that you would be able to see that on the 12th day, no, on the 13th day, according to what Yehovah told Moses, he said, tomorrow you will keep the Passover. This is the Passover in the first month, 14th day. Remember, we're still in the first month. This is all the dedication of the altar, all happening on the first month. Then, Numbers 1, in the second month, we counted Israel's seed. There's going to be more Israel seed after the Passover than there was before the Passover, because that's how the Ger become Ezra men, Israel's seed, spiritually born men. I really would like to have you see that. I wonder if, do I have this? I might. Yes, I do. Here, I'm in exactly the right place. And it was after this, verse 15. In the 13th day of the month, that Moses commanded Israel's seed to observe the Passover. And Israel's seed kept the Passover in its season, in its appointed time, its moed, on the 14th day of the month. As Yehovah had commanded Moses, so did Israel's seed. Now, we saw this in chapter 1 of Numbers. It says, on the second month, on the first day thereof, Yehovah spoke to Moses, number the heads of all the males of Israel's seed from 20 years old and upward. You know, it's hard to keep all of these numbers in line. We numbered Israel's seed from 20 years old and upward, all, it says in Torah, who were able to go to war. It doesn't say it in here. It just says 20 years old and upward. We number Israel's seed. Did it with the princes. Same princes that we used just now when we dedicated the altar. Let's continue. Guess we're going to 8. Now we're going to dedicate the Levites. The Levites are going to be cleansed. Remember, when the priests were sanctified, Aaron and his sons, 4 sons at that time, for 7 days, all 4 sons and Aaron were they must have been at the tent of meeting, because there wasn't a tabernacle yet. The tabernacle wasn't raised until they were done with their sanctification process. And Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and say to him, when you arrange the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light in front of the lampstand. Remember, we're just finishing this. I want you to see how this flows together. Now, when Moses went into the tabernacle meeting to speak with him, he heard the voice of one speaking to him from above the mercy seat that was on the ark of the testimony and between the 2 cherubim. Thus he spoke to him. Okay? Is this what he's doing? Speaking to him? And Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, now speak to Aaron. You just set up. You got everything set up. This is what we're going to do. Speak to Aaron and say to him, when you arrange the lamps, this is Aaron's responsibility to arrange the lamps. We saw that he's going to do it every morning. They light them, turn them off in the morning, light them in the evening, and they're on all night long. Aaron lights them, Aaron turns them off, and he resets them in the morning. This is the resetting process. When you arrange the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light in front of the lampstand. You know, we look at the typical Jewish lampstand, 7 lamps we see, and we think that's what it was like in the tabernacle, that lampstand. I got a note here. I think this is it here. This is more what we're talking about. It's more like a tree than the typical lampstand that we're talking about. If we look at when this is described in Exodus, we see that we're talking about these blossoms that are somehow connected to the lamps. Let's go back. And Aaron did so. He arranged the lamps to face towards the front of the lampstand as Moses commanded, as Yehovah commanded Moses. Now, the workmanship of the lampstand was hammered gold, from its shaft to its flowers. It was a hammered work according to the pattern which Yehovah had shown Moses. So he made the lampstand. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, take the Levites. So here, remember we did the priests, 12th month, 23rd day, from then until the end of the month, they were sanctified. Now we're going to do something like that to the priest, but it's going to not be that lengthy of a process. He says, take the Levites. When we talked about cleanse them, it's tameh them. No, tehor them. And tehor them. There it is right there. Tehor. Tehor them. That's eighth. The mem is what's saying them. Tehor, them. Things that belong to the realm of tamai, that's the opposite of tamah. The opposite of tehor. Remember, tamai, a woman defiled herself and going and having another man come to her. That was tamai. So the things that belong to the realm of tamai are not acceptable or useful in being in the image of Yehovah. This is what we want to learn. We want to learn to be useful and in the image of Yehovah. The things that Torah teaches belong to the realm of Tehor are indeed useful to being in or reflecting the image of Yehovah. That's what we want to do. And that's what we want these priests to do. Reflect the image of Yehovah. They're being sanctified to Yehovah, but we're going to see that they're going to become the priests. Dare I say property? Let's find out. Thus you shall do to them, thus you shall do to them, to cleanse them. It says, sprinkle on them who the breach closing, who the kata'ah is for. They said, sprinkle water. Water? There's nothing here that says water. This word here is me, really is what it says, me, and it means who. Mayim says water, but this isn't mayim. It looks maybe like it might be related, but it's not. But they're saying water. I think water is wrong. Let me tell you why I say that. Thus you shall do to them, to tehor them. It says sprinkle on them who the kata'ah, remember the kata'ah is about closing the breach for the katah, the sin in our lives. It involves shedding of blood. We're going to slaughter, no, we're going to shakat. We're going to kill, slaughter. We both get killed, but when we use shakat, it's not going to be eaten. Not by us anyway, not by the one who slaughters it. It's going to be eaten by the priest. And let them pass a razor over all their bodies. And let them wash their clothes and so make themselves clean. Sprinkle, the sprinkle on them. Sprinkle, what does that mean? Sprinkle. The word they're using here is this word right here. 37, that can't be. Yeah, that is this word right here. Nazah, a verb meaning to spurt, to splatter, to sprinkle, to spring, to leap. This verb appears only a few times in basic verbal form and carries the connotation of blood spurting or splattering. Does that make sense that we would splatter the Levites with the blood of the kata'ah? We did some splattering of the priests when Moses sanctified them to Yehovah's service. Let me show you something here. This is Exodus 29:21. And you shall take some of the blood that is on the altar and some of the anointing oil and sprinkle it on Aaron and his sons. See that? We're taking the blood and sprinkling. This is, I forget where the blood is coming from, but we're sprinkling it on Aaron and his sons with some oil on his sons and on their garment and on the garments of on Aaron and on his garments and on his sons and on the garments of his sons with him. And he and his garments shall be hallowed, and his sons' garments with him. hallowed, set apart. This is what we're doing right now. We're setting apart the Levites to Yehovah's service. Here's another verse. This is 1922. I guess this has the same. This is the same chapter as what we were just reading. This is 29:21 I just read, but here's the whole in context. Let's read it in context. You shall also take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands on the head of the ram. Then you shall kill the ram and take some of the blood and put it on the tip of the right ear of Aaron and the tip of his right ear of his sons, on the thumb of their right hand and the big toe of their right foot. And sprinkle, there's that word again, sprinkle the blood around the altar. And you shall take some of the blood that is on the altar and some of the anointing oil and sprinkle it on Aaron and his sons. That's the one we just read. On his sons and on their garments. And he and his garments shall be hallowed, and his sons garments with him. Also you shall take the fat of the ram, the fat tail, the fat that covers the entrails, the fatty lobe attached to the liver, 2 kidneys. We don't need to read any more of that. My point is, I think it's not water that we're talking about. I think it's blood. And I think this is an overview for this chapter to say what's going to be happening. Yeah, but there's nothing here that talks about water. It appears that blood from the kata'ah is what's being sprinkled on them. Let's take a look at it. Again, oftentimes Yehovah is going to tell you what he's going to do, and then he's going to break it down. I think this may be what's going on here. And so make themselves clean. Probably tehor is what we're talking about. So make themselves clean. Let's see what it says. So make themselves tehar. Make them tehar. They shall be tehar, it says. Then let them take a young bull with its minka of fine flour mixed with oil. And you shall take another young bull as a kata'ah. And you shall bring the Levites before the tent of meeting. And you shall gather together the whole assembly. Here's the edah, the whole assembly of, you shall gather together all Israel's seeds assembly, is really what it's saying. All Israel's seeds assembly. The whole of the assembly of Israel's seed. Yehovah is much more concise than the English that we translate this into. I like to see what the Hebrew says, because I think we get to get a better look at what Yehovah is actually saying, and it helps us to develop better understandings. You get better understandings, you get more wisdom. Got to get the knowledge to get the understandings, and you got to get both to get the wisdom. To really understand what's going on. So you shall bring the Levites before Yehovah. And Israel's seed shall lay their hands on the Levites. Hear that? Israel's seed. This is a big deal. How do they do that? Maybe this is the 12 princes that are laying their hands on the Levites. I would guess that's probably what's going on, representing all of Israel's seed. That they may perform the work of Yehovah. Yehovah's work. And Aaron shall separate. This is not bring. Oftentimes they make this bring, but here we're talking about, here's the word nuf. Nuf. This is the wrong word. There is no vav. But the root of 5130 is correct. It means to sift, to sieve, to separate. And Aaron shall separate the Levites before Yehovah like a nuf, like a terumah. Terumah. This is nuf, this is terumah. Separate them as a tenufah. The tenufah was either the breast or the thigh that comes from the shalamim that is given to the priests for their help in burning the fat on the altar for us. They took it and they waved it before Yehovah, saying this was separated out for us to eat, to keep for our own. And this is what's happening right now with the Levites. They are being separated out from Israel's seed to be given to the priests as a tenufah. Separated them as a tenufah. Here. And Aaron shall separate the Levites before Yehovah's face as a brandished gift, a tenufah, from Israel's seed, that they may perform the work of Yehovah. The Levites are a gift, a tenufah, to the priests. They serve Yehovah as they serve them. We're going to see the priests the Levites are also going to serve Israel's seed with the work that they need to do. Then the Levites shall lay their hands on the heads of the young bull. So here we laid our hands, Israel's seed, probably I say the princes, the Nasi, Israel's Nasi, most likely laid their hands on the Levites. Maybe we had more people involved, maybe not. But now, the Levites are laying their hands on the head of a young bull. And you shall offer one as a kata'ah and the other as an olah. I'm guessing the kata'ah is the one that's probably going to be sprinkled on them. That's my guess. To make a covering for the Levites. It always says atonement. It's kafar. To make a covering for the Levites. He says, and you shall stand the Levites before Aaron and his sons. And here's that same word again. Separate them as a terumah. And separate them as a brandished gift, a tenufah. Tenufah is a terumah. Tenufah, as a tenufah to Yehovah. Remember, they represent Yehovah. If they're doing it to Yehovah, they're doing it to the priests. Separated to Yehovah, they're being separated to the priests. It's going to talk about it here in just a moment. And you shall stand the Levites before Aaron and his sons, and then separate them as a tenufah to Yehovah. Thus you shall separate the Levites from among Israel's seed, and the Levites shall be mine. Yehovah's. I said, see note on 10. The Levites serve the priests. What does it say on 10? So you shall bring the Levites before Yehovah, and the Israel's seed shall lay their hands on the Levites. It says, see the note on that. You shall give the Levites too. Oh yeah, here. I skipped this. The Levites are Yehovah's, and they serve the priests. Look what it says. This is Numbers 3. And Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, bring the tribe of Levi near. Present them before Aaron, the priest, that they may serve him. the Levites are going to serve Aaron the priest. We're going to see he's going to serve their sons also in just a moment. And they shall attend to his needs and the needs of the whole congregation before the tent of meeting, to do the work of the Mishkan. Also, they shall attend to the furnishings of the tabernacle of meeting. This is taking them up, putting them down. And to the needs of Israel's seed, to do the work of the tabernacle. And you shall give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. There it is, Aaron and his sons. They are given entirely to him from among Israel's seed. So you shall appoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall attend to their priesthood. But the Zor, the outsider, those who live on the outskirts of the camp, who comes near, shall be put to death. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, Now behold, I myself have taken the Levites from among Israel's seed, instead of every firstborn who opens the womb among Israel's seed. Therefore the Levites shall be mine. Where were we at? We were on verse 14, and that was the note that said, separate the Levites. Interesting. Thus you shall separate the Levites. Now they're saying separate. They've said offer before. From among Israel's seed, and the Levites shall be mine. Well, remember, the Levites are him, and the priests represent Yehovah. They are also, the Levites are the priests. After the Levites after that, the Levites shall go in to service the tent of meeting. And you shall cleanse them and separate them like a tenufah. Again, it's a gift given from Israel's seed to Yehovah and his representatives to the priests. Separating them is a brandished gift, a tenufah. This word, nuf, comes from this word here, nuf here. This is the root of that shake, sieve. The pictograph, nun, is the picture of a seed. The pei is a picture of a mouth. Combined, these mean seed in the mouth. The sieve is a tool used to separate out materials such as seed by placing the materials in the sieve, lifting it up and shaking it. Yeah, I was being silly last time. Remember we were talking about 22,300 Levites. We could do a pretty good wave offering. All right, that's just being silly. I wonder how they did wave them. How were the priests? How did the priests wave these Levites before Yehovah? Did they lift up their arms? I wonder what that entailed. For they are wholly given to me among Israel's seed. Remember, this is what Numbers 3 was all about. Instead of the firstborn from Israel's seed, we took all the Yehovah took all the Levites to be his. For they are wholly given to me from among Israel's seed. I have taken them for myself instead of all who open the womb, the Bakor of Israel's seed. You know, at that time, that was Numbers 2 or Numbers 3, probably 2. We were catching up. Apparently, we hadn't been giving our firstborn to Yehovah. Maybe they didn't need us yet because he didn't have a tabernacle yet. Now we got a tabernacle. He needs us. But we had to catch up. So he took the firstborn from all of Israel's seed. I was a firstborn. If my father was Israel, I would have been one of those firstborn that needed to be redeemed. My father wasn't. So it's kind of a moot point. But if I were there, if my father was Israel, even though I'm an adult man at this point, I would have been one of the ones that they were taken. My father was a third born. I was the firstborn. But we were getting caught up on all the redeeming that we needed to do. He was taking the priests instead of us, but he's still redeeming us. We still redeem our sons, even after the priests have been set apart to Yehovah as a present for the priests. I said priests being set apart. The Levites being set apart to Yehovah as a present for the priests, instead of the firstborn among Israel's seed. He says, for all the firstborn, all the Bekor, remember, those are men who open the matrix, talking about men. Woman doesn't open the matrix as a firstborn daughter. It's the son who opens the matrix, because we're talking about the seed to future generations. The woman's opening up the matrix are helping to open up the matrix of other men's seeds, not their father's seeds. For all the firstborn among Israel's seed are mine, both man and beast. On the day that I struck all the Bekor of the land of Egypt, I sanctified them to myself. I have taken the Levites instead of the Bekor of Israel's seed. And I have given the Levites, here it is, I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron and his sons from among Israel's seed to do the work for Israel's seed in the tent of meeting. It gets really redundant here now. And to make a covering for Israel's seed, that there be no plague among Israel's seed when Israel's seed comes before the sanctuary. Thus, Aaron and all Israel's seed's assembly did to the Levites. This is not the ladies doing this. This is not the servants. This is not the ger. This is the assembly of Israel's seed. See, boy, when we talk about the children of Israel, it just gets us so screwed up. There is no such thing. They say the sons of Israel, and some of them it's better. But we're still not talking about Ezra men. When we talk about the sons of Israel, now we're talking about little kids. We're talking about servants. We're talking about ger. No, we're not. We're talking about Ezra men. Israel's seed are the Ezra men. We've shown you that over and over and over again. Thus, Moses and Aaron and all Israel's seed's assembly did to the Levites, according to all Yehovah commanded Moses concerning the Levites, so Israel's seed did to them. And the Levites purified themselves, washed their clothes, and Aaron presented them like a tenufah before Yehovah, and made a covering for them to tahor them, to make them clean, to cleanse them. After that, the Levites went in to do their work in the tent of meeting before Aaron and his sons, as Yehovah commanded Moses concerning the Levites, so they did to them. Thus Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, what did he say? Look at this. This is what pertains to the Levites. From 25 years old and above, one may enter to perform the service in the work of the tabernacle and the service of the tent of meeting. From 25 years and above, he goes on. And at the age of 50 years, they must cease performing this work and shall work no more. They're still going to be Levites, but they're not doing the same kind of work that they were doing. Their period of service appears to be from 25 years old to 50 years old. Now, look at the priests. They serve differently. It says, take a census of Kohath's seed from among Israel, or from among Levi's seed, by their families, by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who enter the service to do the work of the tent of meeting. The Kohathites serve as priests from 30 to 50 years old. The Levites serve as, shall I say, servants of the priests, maybe even servants to Israel's seed, from 25 years and above. And just so we know, remember, there was 20 years in all. When we were numbering Israel's seed, we did it from 20 years old and above. There was no limitation on that as far as how old they were, 20 years old and above. Okay, just another verse or two in this chapter. It says, they may minister with their brethren. They, who's they? The Levites, may minister with their brethren in the tabernacle of meeting, the tent of meeting, to attend to needs, but they themselves shall do no work. I mean, that is totally confusing to me. But no work? What do you mean no work? Here's what they're talking about. But he shall serve with his brothers in the tent of meeting to keep the charge. Only he shall not serve at a service. I think what we're talking about is they shall not serve at a service. In other words, they shall not be doing the work that the priests are going to be doing. So you shall do to the Levites concerning their charge. That's got to be what they're talking about. Work? No, it's not work. It's service that we're talking about. Let me read it again. This is Hebrew Roots Bible. He shall serve. It says he. They said they. It clearly is he that we're talking about. So there is no they. We're talking about each Levite individually. He shall serve with his brothers, the other Levites, in the tent of meeting to keep the charge. Only he shall not serve at a service. So you shall do to the Levites concerning their charge. All right. That finishes this chapter. I wanted to try and get to one more chapter. It's only 121. I love this chapter. I think there's just so much in it, and probably we won't finish this today. This is a bit long. Let's see how far we can get. Now Yehovah spoke to Moses. Again, when is he speaking to Moses? Take a look at it. In the wilderness, in the first month of the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt. This is the Passover. Remember we said on the 12th day, it said in Yasher, on the 13th day, he says, tomorrow you shall keep the Passover. This is what we're doing. I'm going to read it again. Now Yehovah spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the first month, in the second year after they came out of the land of Egypt, saying, let Israel's seed keep the Passover at its appointed time, at its moed. I'm sorry, not me'od, moed. I confuse those two words a lot. Caught myself in a couple weeks doing that. Israel's seed keep the Passover at the moed, the appointed time. 14th day of the month at evening. On the 14th day of the month at twilight, evening, you shall keep it at its appointed time according to the rites and ceremonies. You shall keep it. The rites and ceremonies. Let me go through some of my notes here. Passover is again commanded. Second Passover for unclean and this is an overview of the chapter. The Passover is commanded, and then the second Passover is commanded. We're talking about the second Passover is really what I wanted you to see today before we close. And when the stranger, this is Exodus 12. We're talking about doing it according to its rites and ceremonies. Here's what happens at the Passover. And when a stranger, talking about the ger, dwells with you, the Ezra is the you we're talking about, Israel's seed, and wants to keep the Passover to Yehovah. Let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall become as a native of the land. The word that he's becoming is an Ezra. He shall become an Ezra. That's what it says. They put a native of the land. No, he shall become an Ezra. Now, what do we think of a native of the land? You got to be born in the land, don't you? But these guys aren't in the land. No, we've got to develop better understandings. For no uncircumcised person shall eat it, circumcised in flesh or in heart shall eat it. One law shall be for the native born, the Ezra, and for the ger, always gets translated as stranger. Sometimes in some of the Bibles it even says foreigner. Oh man, that's terrible. Who dwells among you? Who dwells with you? Who gores with you? The Ezra man. I put perhaps the lamb that was killed when the prodigal son returned in the New Testament is the Passover lamb that will bring him back into a correct relationship with his heavenly Father, or with our heavenly Father, with Yehovah. I think it is. I put either Yehovah and his ways do not change in your life, or they do. In my life, they don't change. We're talking about keeping the Passover. This is the second year. This is after we came out of Egypt. Aren't we supposed to be doing it in memory of that? No, we're not. That's the things that are being taught. But if we're doing it in the second year, we're going to be doing it in the third year. And to all generations, that's what he says. It shall be an everlasting ordinance to all your generations. Well, it's to all Israel's generations. Do you want to be Israel? This is how you become Israel. The ger, the man who left the kingdom of his birth, joined himself to Israel on Passover, can become Israel. This is the time to do it. We're about a month away right now. I saw the new moon last night. The next new moon is going to be the beginning of our feast. The day we blow our trumpets to let everybody know the feast is beginning. So Moses told, well, let me see, I got one more note here. So let Israel's seed keep the Passover at the appointed time, the moed. That's for that particular translation. And again, this is the moed. At its appointed time. Usually it says his, in. This says in its moed. In its moed. The bet says it, in. This will oftentimes say him, but it can also say it. So we're talking about the Passover. It's the it. It's in its appointed time. So Moses told Israel's seed that they should keep the Passover. What day did he tell them to do that? We saw it in Yasher on the 13th day, after we had dedicated the altar. This is when this is going down. And they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the first month, at twilight in the wilderness of Sinai, according to all that Yehovah commanded Moses, so Israel's seed did. But it says, and there were certain men, certain Enoshim is the word that we're using here. It comes from the word Enosh. It's talking about men. Certain men. This is the plural form of the ish. Now there were certain men. We're not talking about ladies is the point. There are no Enoshim ladies. These are men. And there were Enoshim who were tameh by a human corpse. Remember, they had to be put out of the camp. They didn't get to keep the Passover. They're outside the camp. So they could not keep the Passover on that day. And they came before Moses and Aaron that day. And those men said to him, we became defiled by a human corpse. Why are we kept from presenting our korban, from bringing, let's see what it says. Why are we kept from bringing? This is korav. And offering, korban, of Yehovah at its appointed time. There's the same thing, in its appointed time. With Israel's seed. We want to do it. Why are we prevented? And Moses has to get an answer. And Moses said to them, stand still, that I may hear what Yehovah will command concerning you. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Israel's seed, saying, if any one of you or your posterity is unclean, tameh, because of a corpse, or is far away on a journey, he may keep Yehovah's Passover, Pesach, on the 14th day of the second month at twilight. They may keep it. They shall eat it with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs, exactly how we did it in the first month. They shall leave none of it until morning, nor break one of its bones. Again, we're all doing it. Well, look at what it says. According to the ordinances of the Passover, they shall keep it. So if we didn't get to do it in the first month, we can do it in the second month. Wow. This is love. Maybe you don't even understand this. We have 2 times that we can keep the Passover. If we miss it once, we still can do it. Father, thank you. You want men to become spiritually born seed. He goes on, and this is amazing. Look what he says. But, really, you could say, and, the man who is clean. I think but really works better. It's still a vav. It says, and the man. This is what it is. It's the vav, which says and, then it says the ish. But the man, and the man who is clean and not on a journey and ceases to keep the Passover. Hear that? Here's a man, we're talking about Israel's seed at this point, Ezra men, who weren't on a journey and weren't defiled by a human corpse, who stopped keeping the Passover. They were keeping it, but they stopped keeping it. It says, that same soul shall be cut off from among his people. Why? Because he did not bring the korban, the offering of Yehovah, at its appointed time. He says, his own sin shall that man bear. I rewrote it to be more in line with what Torah says. Usually says that man shall bear his own sin. But it really says something a little bit differently. His own sin. His own sin. It's like double owned. His own sin. His own. Isn't it funny? It says own when it says his own sin. It's like, yes, this is yours. His own sin shall that man bear. Wow. You know, sometimes it's interesting what it doesn't say. This is about the man who was doing it, but stopped doing it. It says, because he did not bring the offering at the appointed time, that man shall bear his own sin. So it stands to reason that the man, then it says, that same man shall be cut off from among his people, because he did not bring the offering, the korban of Yehovah at the appointed time, that man shall bear his own sin. So the man who does do it doesn't get cut off from among his people. He gets to remain in Israel, and he doesn't bear his own sin. Could this be the time of life? This is what it's called, the time of life, Passover. Genesis 17 and 18 talks about this very thing being the time of life, when new life is given to the man and he becomes as one born in the land in Ezra. The man who doesn't get it gets kicked out from among his people, and he bears his own sin. But the man who does keep it gets to stay with his people and doesn't bear his own sin. Could this be the time that sin is forgiven for a man? Even unrepented sin? Sin that we did in ignorance, we don't even know we're doing it yet? I think it is. This is the time. Now, look what it says in Psalms 50. I use this verse a lot since I found it. It says, the mighty one, Elohim, Yehovah has spoken and called the earth from the rising of the sun to its going down. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, Elohim will shine. Out of Zion is his people. Yehovah is going to shine. Our Elohim shall come and shall not keep silent. A fire shall devour before him, and it shall be a very tempestuous all around him. Well, you look in Joel. Look what it says, Joel 23. A fire devours before them, Israel's seed. And behind them a flame burns. The land is like a garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Surely nothing will escape them. Here's Malachi. But who can endure the day of his coming? And who can stand when he appears? For he is like a refiner's fire and like a launderer's soap. He will sit as refiner and a purifier of silver. He will purify Levi's seed and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer to Yehovah an offering in righteousness. Here's Malachi 4. For behold, the day is coming, burning like an oven, and all the proud, yes, all who do wickedly will stumble. And the day which is coming shall burn them up, says Yehovah of hosts, that will leave them neither root or branch. No seed is ever going to come from them again. He goes on. He calls to the heavens from above and to the earth, that he may rule his people. Who are his people? This is the next verse. He says, gather together my kind, my kasid. Gets translated often as saints, but we don't know what a saint is. How does a man become a saint? It happens at Passover. Gather together my kind, Elohim kind, spiritual kind, men who are created again in Yehovah's likeness, according to his image. Those who have made covenant with me by slaughter. Zavik, talking about Passover. Let the heavens declare his righteousness, for Yehovah himself is governor. Cut off. That same person shall be cut off from among his people. It says, cut, karath, cut off, down, asunder. Consumed, destroyed. Passover is not something that we have to do. It's something that we want to do so we can remain in the land and not have to bear our own sin. Do you hear that? There's no way I'm not going to keep Passover from year to year. It's going to be done because I don't want to get kicked out of Israel and I don't want to have my sin stay on me. Do you, men? Sometimes what Torah does not say is important to us to understand. Well, here's another way that I put it. The man who does bring his offering his korban at the appointed time, will stay numbered among Yehovah's people and not bear his own sins. This is what we're talking about. Well, let me just read a couple more verses. It says, remember, we were just talking about Israel, but if a man ceases to bring his offering to Yehovah at the appointed time, talking about Israel still. He was keeping it, but now he's not keeping it. He's going to get kicked out. His sins are going to remain on him. But now it talks about this ger. And if a stranger, a ger, gores among you Ezra's seed, Israel, and would keep Yehovah's Passover, he must do according to the rite of the Passover, according to its ceremony. You shall have one ordinance both for a ger and an Ezra of the land, must be what that is. A ger or an Ezra. Yeah, there is no da there for a ger and for an Ezra of the land. Now I'm going to stop here. This is how an Ezra is going to become. This is how a ger is going to become an Ezra. Do you want to have your sins forgiven, Mr. Ger? You know, it looks to me. Now I was a ger I left the kingdom of my birth back in 2000, but it probably was not until 2006, maybe 7, that I kept Passover for the first time and became an Ezra. I was a ger for a long time, but it was because I was ignorant. I didn't understand that there was more. I thought I was Israel, but I wasn't Israel. I just joined myself to Israel as a ger. But in the normal flow of Israel, a ger only stays a ger for less than a year, because at Passover, that same ger is going to become an Ezra man. He's not going to be a ger any longer. This is the process that we go through in becoming an Ezra man. Every man starts as a ben Nakar, ben Nakar, a foreign son. Then we meet somebody who tells us about Israel, Yehovah's ways, his set-apart ways. We start learning, we start growing. That's the toe shop. But there's a point where we finally leave the kingdom of our birth because we say, I don't want to be a part of that kingdom anymore. I want to be a part of Yehovah's people. You can only serve one master, man. Just as a woman can only serve one man, a man can only serve one master. Isaiah 47 calls us virgin sons, virgin daughters of Babylon. That's what most of us have been. And we think it's good. We think, oh, well, Yehovah anoints the king. No. We have to leave the kingdom of our birth, join ourselves to Yehovah's people, or we're not Yehovah's people. And when we do that, we become ger. But at Passover, we get to become the Ezra man. What did it say? Circumcise yourself and all the men of your households and draw near and keep the Passover and become an Ezra. Become the Ezra, the native born of the land. Sure use a lot of words for one word, don't we? All right. Oh, here it is right here. And when a stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Passover to Yehovah, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall become an Ezra. For no uncircumcised person shall eat it. You know, you might be circumcised, but that doesn't mean you have a circumcised heart. You're still serving the Elohim of the land. You don't have a circumcised heart. Sorry. You may think you do. You may want to, and that's a good thing. But there's more. There's more to this life, to becoming Yehovah's people. He did not give a single commandment to Israel until after we left Egypt. Didn't give any commandments to the Egyptians, did he? Not a single one. Well, we're going to stop here. I've got 146, and I've been ranting for about an hour and 45 minutes. Next week, we're going to finish this chapter. We got through 14. We still have another 10 verses or so to go. And we're going to talk about order of march next week, blowing the trumpets. What's Yehovah's system for gathering Israel's seed to him to get instructions, and for breaking camp, and for bringing our camp back together? These are the kinds of things that we're going to talk about. And then finally, we're going to talk about the quail incident. I don't know if we're going to get that far next week. We'll see. All right. Well, hey, Father, you're so good. We give you all the glory, the honor, the praise. Thank you for the people that come, who listen each week. Father, guard my words. Let my words be your words. Let your words be my words. I love you so much. Father, I know the responsibility of bringing your word to people who want to become your people. Please use me. I love you so much. Hey, thanks you guys. We'll see you again next week.